I was an Army officer. I was a psychological operations analyst, counterterrorism. I had a top secret clearance. I was in the Bush administration from 2003 to 2008. I worked at the State Department as a counterterrorism analyst. I was at Special Operations Command. I was at U.S. Central Command. We assembled a report. We sent it up to General James Mattis at U.S. Central Command. And Brad said, "Sir, I am Brad Birkenfeld. I'm the Swiss banker. I've got 22,000 bank accounts, none of which were shared with you. They all articulate terrorist financing sources. And I know this for a fact because Booz-Allen Hamilton is contracted to do that. And I know Scott Bennett was a contractor, and he never got this information." After James Mattis started asking questions, he was fired by Obama. And then all the rats started jumping ship from the Obama administration. It was a long sink. But Brad then got out of prison. And 1 month later, on September 11th, 2012, he was paid off $104 million, and he went completely silent, probably because they threatened him with lead, not just gold. And on that same day, what else happened?
You got out.
No. Benghazi occurred. And everyone in the intelligence community has said Benghazi was done simultaneously with this $104 million payoff. Benghazi was not an Egyptian filmmaker issue. It was bad guys that we were employing that were coming in from various sources to usurp and destabilize and kick out of power Muammar Gaddafi. And they were being funded through a lot of Swiss banks and European banks and other banks. But we were funding bad guys, and that came out in the FOIA that Judicial Watch came, and it came from the Defense Intelligence Agency. So we knew back in those days, September 11th, 2012, that this was something much more. And it's just coming out now. So Hillary Clinton, when she gets up and gives all her lies, well, we know that, you know, the horse is the same color. As an officer sworn to uphold the Constitution, as an officer entrusted by the men under me to protect them with the best knowledge that I knew how, I started filing reports to 150, 200 members of Congress. So Snowden was significant because he was part of Brad Birkenfeld's operation in Geneva, Switzerland. He was also a Booz-Allen Hamilton contractor with the people that I worked with at Hawaii in NSA surveillance operations. So Snowden saw our reports, recognized Birkenfeld, recognized me, packed his bag, and fled. I was filing all this up the chain of command. No one responded except one person, Senator Rand Paul. Senator Rand Paul was the only one. No one at Fox News did anything, wrote a single letter, didn't investigate a single thing. I'm a military officer. I was in terrorist financing. I filed all these reports, and no one's done anything. Here they are. You report them. You do something with them. And Michael Iskoff and Tom Hamburger for 2 hours are looking at me, not saying much, and they walk out, you know, tail between their legs, sort of pale. They don't write a single word, nor do they return any of my documents, despite the numerous times I tried to get them back and wrote them. Because it's got politicians, it's got military, it's got media that have all basically violated the Constitution. And what's important is, it's not about me. It's about there's money that Swiss banks have been paying to bad guys in the Middle East, ISIS now, that we've known about since 2012, and we have not shut it down. We haven't even investigated it. We haven't debriefed Bennett or Birkenfeld to say, what have you got? And how many kids are dead from 2012 that we're serving? How many kids have lost their arms, their legs? How many of your kids, perhaps, or your neighbor's kids? And if someone in here has lost a kid in 2012, 2013, I'm sorry to say that kid may be dead because the money that bought that ordinance was bought through these banks that these guys in Congress knew about in 2012 and have done nothing. So that's a treasonable offense in my book. Michael Hastings, I sent him all of my stuff, and I pointed out, here's what's going on, Hastings. McChrystal was part of my chain of command in special operations and PSYOP, and Hastings got all this material. I think it was within 2 months he was killed. Now this is interesting too, and you can't make this up. UBS and HSBC are all known for terrorist financing. Well, they are represented by a law firm called Covington and Burling. Covington and Burling in Washington, D.C. Covington and Burling employed Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer before they went into government. They now employ them again because Lanny Brewer and Eric Holder have recently went back to Covington and Burling. So it's important because they prosecuted Birkenfeld, the Swiss banker, who came to them and said, I've got all this terrorist financing information, money laundering information. Lanny Brewer and Eric Holder, working with Hillary Clinton, because Brad showed me State Department cables, and I said, Brad, I was at the State Department when these cables were written. I was in the middle of it. So Lanny Breuer and Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton, in her power as Secretary of State, conspired to prosecute Birkenfeld, hide his information, and threw him in jail. Then Lanny Breuer and Eric Holder went back to Covington and Burling. So they're still representing Union Bank of Switzerland and HSBC. Talk about a conflict of interest. Another interesting thing was Roger Zackheim, the son of Dov Zackheim. Dov Zackheim, my boss at Booz-Allen Hamilton. Dov Zackheim, the $2.3 trillion comptroller. His son, Roger Zackheim, was at the House Armed Services Committee as general counsel when my reports were going up to the Armed Services Committee, exposing his dad, exposing Swiss banks, exposing Booz-Allen Hamilton, exposing this whole drama, hoping that someone was going to wear the Constitution and do their job. Instead, he sabotaged the reports. Roger Zackheim sabotaged the reports, and then he went to Covington and Burling to work also. So Covington and Burling represents Roger Zackheim, Lanny Breuer, Eric Holder, and Michael Chertoff, the Secretary of previous Homeland Security. Call these members of Congress, and you say, Member of Congress, I'm calling on behalf of myself. I know a report about an Army officer who exposed terrorist financing that's been killing our soldiers. What have you done about it? And I've got a couple books up here. One is Shell Game, and that's the whole story, and it lists all the senators and all that, and everybody I outreach to, and lists the whole story of Birkenfeld and myself. The other book is Exhibits, and that's a book about 2 inches thick of every letter that was ever sent to a member of Congress or the media. The letters that went to them that said this is connected to Benghazi, this is connected to Swiss banks, this is connected to the Hillary Clinton Foundation, who's now run by Donna Shalala. So Donna Shalala, who heads up the Clinton Foundation, that's getting money from a lot of these Sunni Salafist country banks. I say that to share with you the depth of the fear and the depravity and the lies that are behind these people in these areas of power. David Shalala, Donna Shalala, Hillary Clinton, Lanny Breuer, Eric Holder, McCasey, who was the prior Attorney General, and in the military. This is an operation for us to really kind of take back our country and challenge the political forces and hopefully raise up new leaders. Julian Assange of WikiLeaks supplied all this material in the WikiLeaks cables to Brad Birkenfeld. Brad Birkenfeld, of course, met me in prison. We started going through everything, and then Snowden goes over to Russia and takes off. And the connection is the Carlyle Group. That was the father company. It's connected with George W. Bush. It's the overseeing company of Booz-Allen Hamilton. Ian Brzezinski, Mike McConnell, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta. They're all Booz-Allen people. Snowden and Scott Bennett were Booz-Allen. Military, I worked, these are all the people at U.S. Central Command, U.S. Civil Affairs, Psychological Operations Command. These are all the U.S. Congress committees, House and Senate, that I sent reports to. And Armed Services, where Roger Zackheim worked. Intelligence Committee, Homeland Security, Judiciary, all the media, Fox News people. These are the intelligence agencies that were connected with Snowden. These are the two banks, Union Bank of Switzerland and HSBC, biggest financiers of terrorism. Covington and Burling, that's the law firm in Washington that represents them. Michael Chertoff is now with them. You can't see the names here, but it's Lanny Breuer and Eric Holder. Loretta Lynch, now the Attorney General, was instrumental in the settlement with HSBC and UBS. They never prosecuted HSBC or UBS. They gave them a 2% fine and let them go their merry way. And all the bank accounts that Birkenfeld and I presented, they gave them advance warning to change. So all the money, the bank accounts, the significance is, had I met Birkenfeld and taken command of this situation, I would have shut down the bank accounts overnight. All the money that you got going to ISIS and all that, it would have been shut down. But it wasn't, and that's the treason. We've got guys that were killed, and I think Kristen Ann had a good point. Someone had been funding enemies against our Constitution, and that was a charge of treason. Obama and Clinton and Holder and Brewer have been funding our enemies through ISIS, through Al-Qaeda, to destabilize Syria, to destabilize Iran. They've already done it to Libya. against our military and contractor and Europe. This all could have been prevented, but they never did because of the loyalty of Covington and Burling to Union Bank of Switzerland, and of course Obama's questionable past and loyalties. And these are the countries: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Libya. Notice they're all Wahhabist, Salafist countries. It's not Iran, it's not Syria. They've tried to shift the blame to Iran and Syria, but really, quite frankly, Iran and Syria and Russia have been given an improper definition. They are the aristocrats of the Middle East. They're not the savage, beheading, boy-loving rapists that you see in the Salafist Wahhabist group. The Iranian, the Syrian regime are much more mentally and psychologically stable, and they were much more helpful to us right after September 11th. Needless to say, we've all discovered much later that September 11th was done by parties other than what was blamed. It's real. This happened. It's a true story. It's not fiction. You couldn't make it up. God is great. He's given this as a tool to use as a crowbar and breach the opportunity and exploit the initiative.